term. And this project kind of focuses on building these community relations between students and different members of the community through these interviews. So I had the opportunity to interview 2 different Monmouth locals. I also had the chance to create a database of photographs from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and just kind of highlight the differences between the city back then and how it's changed over time. During the interview, we talked a lot about the changes over time. I think one of the major changes that we discussed was the, during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was a very contentious time. And there was a lot happening. It was the height of the civil rights movement. It was the height of the Cold War. There was so much going on and so much contention. But as I was trying to press them on that issue, I feel like we just kept coming back to this same sense that today is even more contentious than it was back then because we have so much access to information. Nowadays, if something happens all the way around the world, you can hear about it in less than a minute. Back then, if something happened, you wouldn't hear about it for sometimes weeks or months at a time. So the times are definitely changing. And I think that it's very important to recognize that although that we are more connected than we've ever been, we are also at the same time becoming more and more disconnected. And I think that kind of plays into why these type of communications and relationships are just important, because it can be so easy to become distracted and lose sight of what's happening around you because of what's happening on your screen. So I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time, but I was just very moved by this project, and I'm just very thankful for everybody who helped me with this. And I had a great time learning about the city of Monmouth and your guys' history, and I can't wait to see what this city has for the future. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Cody. And we typically don't have questions or comments for speakers, but this was a project of the Historic Commission. If anyone has any questions for Cody?
Where will the results of your study be found?
So I wouldn't say that there was necessarily any results. I think that it was more of just like a community-based study. Just for me, I'm not from Monmouth. I'm from Amity, so I'm not very familiar with Monmouth and Monmouth's culture. So for me, I think one of the major things that I took away are the tidbits of history that were really fascinating was the divide between Monmouth and Independence, the little rivalry that you guys have. That was really interesting to learn about. I had no idea that Monmouth was a dry town until the early 2000s. So just those little pieces of history were just really fascinating to learn about, and it just really kind of characterizes this city. And meeting all the different people within the community I thought was really special, because those are the relationships that matter, and those are the things that are going to stick with you for the rest of your life.
Cody, I was one of 2 lead petitioners on beer and wine in Monmouth. Dr. Paul Sieber in the back helped out. And a few years later, Mayor Kuntz asked the voters to approve hard liquor. So just to know you have resources here if you want to hear more about any of that.
So a challenge that, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, I heard that the debates were really contentious, and that there was quite the controversies going on with the trash men discovering the beer bottles in the trash cans and things like that. So that would be really, really fascinating to learn more about, for sure.
The famous Brandt's alcohol consumption, Monmouth versus Independence survey.
So a challenge that people in our position find ourselves in often is, how do we get more young people interested in community service and public service? So do you have any takeaways, any guidance, since you're representing a different demographic than we normally see here?
I would say that it's more dependent on the situation. I think that overall, though, I just more outreach and less division between both sides. Like, I think that students have this feeling that the older generations have this sort of grudge against them, but I don't see that to be true when I have conversations with our elder generation. So I think that more understanding and compassion between both sides is what's the most important to fixing these generational divides.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, thanks so much, Cody, for coming up. We really do appreciate your work with the commission and your appearance here tonight to let us know what you found out about that. And thank you to your professor as well. We always appreciate her and the connection she brings with students in the city. So thank you. All right, that brings us to a presentation by Polk Family Community Outreach. We have a few members of the department here and our finance director, Susie Marston, to talk to us about the public assistance that we give, especially through our public safety fee. So, Susie.
Thank you, Mayor Koontz. Members of the council, I just wanted to come up and introduce Nicole Sunby and Stephanie Gilbert. They're from Polk County Family and Community Outreach, and they are here to give you an update on the Public Safety Fee Assistance Program. Something to keep in mind, we do have to we have to review the public safety fee annually, and it happens during the budget time. And so we'll have that on the June 17th agenda. So I'm hoping that you can take the information they give for you tonight to help with that discussion on the 17th. So.
Hello, my name is Nicole Walker-Sumby, and I'm the Resource Center Coordinator at the Polk Community Resource Center, just down the street behind Roth's.
And I'm Stephanie Gilbert. I am the Program Manager for the Family and Community Outreach Department.
And before we talk about the public safety fee, I can't not talk about the amazing partnership that we've had with the City of Monmouth and the assistance funds that you all have allocated, or the city has allocated and allowed us to help distribute for, I think it's been about 3 years. We have appreciated incredibly the trust that you have shown us, and also the partnership in this to be able to meet local community needs. Generally, we've received about $10,000 annually from the city to help just with assistance for customers in emergency situations. And while the city has set a limit on about $300 per assistance, it's been the Resource Center who's provided the staff and also the criteria for how we equitably make sure that we distribute those funds to families in need. Currently, we don't take administrative costs out of those funds that we receive from the city, and we distribute those, again, using our criteria that we come up with. Starting in November, the city began assessing, I think it's November, correct me if I'm wrong, the $10.25 fee. And we explored the option of being able to assist with this fee specifically, but we could not justify the administrative cost of cutting $10.25 checks for every person who might come into the office just needing help with that fee. And that was the parameters that were given to us for how we could assist. With that said, like I said, we received really clear boundaries from the county that we were not able, from a fiscal standpoint on our end, to be able to do that. With that being said, we have had no one come into our office specifically seeking only assistance with the $10.25 fee. So we have had no one asking just about the fee alone. While it may have added to the burden of their costs in general, that hasn't been the only thing. And so when we've had people come in the door, we've worked, as we always do, to find lots of different ways to provide assistance and resources with people coming in our doors. So in the handout that's in there, you can see that we've paid around $256 in fees since November. And this has been just as we've helped out with the full utility bill, we've also been able to help out with that $10.25 fee since it was assessed. That also, I will say that number is as of, I think, a couple weeks ago, so we may have had a couple more as we finish out this fiscal year for us. At the Resource Center, needing assistance with utilities very much for us is kind of a canary in a coal mine situation. In particular, the City of Monmouth is, how they manage shutoffs is pretty responsibly and pretty quickly. And what that means for us is that when people come in from the City of Monmouth with a late utility bill or a shutoff notice, it generally is an amount small enough that we can find the funds to assist. And it also allows us to connect with this family who is most likely early on in the situation of needing assistance. The example, just to give you one that comes to my mind, we had an older couple come in with their son, and they were struggling with, I think it was a deposit. They needed to move, like a no-cause situation where they had to exit their one house and they needed help with a deposit. They also needed help with a deposit for a utility bill. But in all of this conversation, we found out that this person was a veteran and was not really connected with our veteran services. And so in office, we were able to assist them with a deposit, a deposit on their utility bill, on their housing, and then also connect them with veteran services. And I checked today just to make sure before I shared the story, but they are in process of filing a claim, and with the hopefulness that they will be able to receive continued assistance. That is an example of what we really hope happens. And when we have people come in early, when they are just struggling a little bit with a utility bill, that allows us to make sure they're connected early and prevent larger utility bills, larger rental costs, all of those sorts of things. Moving forward, we anticipate a rising need in Monmouth. Historically, we've relied on Community Action Agency and the Energy Assistance Program to provide us with additional assistance. Just this last year, Energy Assistance helped out with about 117 families in Monmouth with City of Monmouth bills. It's approximately $2,000 to $3,000 a month, with higher, in January we see 5,000, in summer months we see sometimes lower. As it stands right now, we don't anticipate that program is going to be having any funds for City of Monmouth customers in the new fiscal year. We hope for other answers, but as you all know, there's just a lot of unknowns in federal funding. So there's also other funding streams that are unclear about their future as we look forward. And so we anticipate rising needs here in Monmouth and just not an uncertainty with funding moving forward. So as you determine what next steps are for the public safety fee and those funds collected already, we just are hoping that you can consider the benefits of having some increased flexibility of how to spend funding so that we can spend funds to meet the needs of our community. Also, potentially having a buffer in these uncertain times where we anticipate a potential increase in need and a decrease in other funds. And so just considering that it might be nice to have a little bit of a buffer there. And then also, just as a plug, currently we don't take administrative fees, but we anticipate that in the future that is something that we're going to have to explore. We are going to have to explore. Our fiscal department continues to push us in that direction for every contract or memorandum of understanding that we have, that we ask for some sort of cost to cover admin fees. Again, we appreciate the amazing partnership with the City of Monmouth. This is something that has been incredible to have, and we really appreciate your continued just valuing of our staff and our time and our community, and we appreciate that a lot, and we continue to look forward to working together.
Any questions for Nicole or Stephanie, or comments?
Keep up the good work.
I also have our annual report that we're not going to speak on tonight, but I'm happy to pass out and you guys can take.
Councilor Carey, then Councilor Lopez.
Thanks for the report, and thanks for the work and the assistance on this. At the moment, there's $256 that have been expended, and that will likely go up with awareness and other things. How would the need be met if the Public Assistance Fund were not forwarded to you, and you would not have that $256?
Okay.
You've got more than that, but you've administered that. How would that impact you?
So right now we get about $10,000, $11,000 from the City of Monmouth. Usually it's 10, and then sometimes some donations come in throughout the year. That's a little bit of a variable, but around $10,000-ish. So if the public safety fee just completely went away, we would just use those dollars that we have to cover the fee, the $10.25 fee. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it would just eat into that a little bit more.
And what is the what's your source of funding for these utility assistance and other rental assistance programs that you're using?
So there's a lot of different funding streams.
Yeah. Shouldn't have asked it quite
Yeah,
that way,
so,
because you'll be here all night.
Yeah, no, but there's, right now, we receive funding through Community Action Agency for specific situations where people are at risk of homelessness. So if they have an eviction notice, eviction prevention. So there's a funding stream for that right now. Again, we're at the end of our fiscal year, so July 1 might look a lot different, and we're not 100% sure, as you all know, with the legislative session still in process. But for right now, we have funding through Community Action Agency. That's through, federal dollars, through the state, through Community Action. We typically apply for things like the Oregon Community Grant. We apply for Dallas Community Foundation dollars. We have
Department of Human Services.
Department of Human Services. We have some dollars through Willamette Health Council. We have some dollars through Early Learning Hub in our state. Sends some dollars, pass-through dollars for kids specifically under the age of 6, 5, and 364 days we can use for specific. And then we we also have funding through Service Integration, which is a county program that partners with the school district and Salem Health. And those are dollars that we can use for certain situations. We also have community partners like for families in Dallas. The Dallas Ministerial Association is an organization that we can partner and leverage funds with. The Salvation Army we leverage funds with. Family Promise, just forgot, we leverage funds with. And I'm probably missing more, but we work really hard to really generally not just be using one fund, but braiding together multiples, leveraging those dollars with as many as we can, so that when we do have a large amount, like a back rent, something like that, where we're looking at sometimes for rent in town, $1,200 to $3,000, we often don't have one fund that can just pay for all of that. And so we're piecemealing it together with lots of different ones.
I think and I can't find it back quickly here, but you have provided only about, it seems to me, only about half of the people that have requested this sort of assistance that you've been able to apply the public safety fee dollars to. Why is that?
That's a great question. The rest of those are deposits. So we do assist when people move in there for a rental unit. It can cost anywhere from $175 to $220 to start service. And so there's not a safety fee assessed on those. And so we don't assist with it in those cases. And I would say that is that initial startup fee for those who are renting is something we get often. You saw about 50% of our cases where someone's moving in, they have the money to be sustainable, but those initial costs are just really hard for someone who is living paycheck to paycheck with little savings. Those initial costs are oftentimes difficult to account for.
We're going to be talking about this in more detail as we do our annual review on this, but while this amount seems to be, minuscule, and even the total amount collected is not all that much, it seems prudent, at least from my perspective, that as we have that discussion, we dig in a little deeper. It makes a lot of sense to keep this in our toolbox with the uncertainty that we don't know. Were it to be transferred elsewhere, I'm not sure it would be that impactful. I'm not sure that it'll be that impactful for you guys, but that was the intent of setting this up, was to have an impact for those that needed it. So I'm hoping that we can, when we get the deeper dive, that we can bear that in mind, and we'll give it another year and see what happens.
Yeah.
That's just my 2 bits.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much, Nicole, for your presentation on the fee. I'm interested in, in your view or your team's view on what barriers to usership or to adoption there may be, right? Because we collect these funds. Our intent as a city is to not have these funds just grow in an account, but to go out and do good in the community in the way they were intended. And so, you mentioned a little bit about like the lack of flexibility in the funds, right? They can only be used for this specific fee. But are there other barriers that might be present right now for individuals?
I think that is the biggest barrier right now. So as it notes in the agenda packet and the background information, we have about $12,000 that has been collected, that has been passed on to us, and we've only spent about $250 of that. Because we can only spend it on those $10, that flexibility would be wonderful to have if we were able to use that moving forward, potentially with customers beyond just that $10 fee, but to help with the full amount of what they owe for these emergency type situations. I recognize that that wasn't how it was initially developed, and so I know that has to be a discussion, but that flexibility definitely is, I think, one of the primary barriers. I would say maybe another barrier that comes to mind is just making sure that people know that the Resource Center is available. We have tried in the past to have staff present on shut-off day, and that has been really helpful, but it is highly dependent on our capacity on any given day, and so I can think of, on a random shut-off day where our bilingual staff that we were planning to send happens to be sick, and we are just unable to send somebody else capacity-wise, and so then we've lost kind of that connection. My understanding is also that I think there was a change in staff here, a bilingual staff that had exited their position, and so I think we've seen maybe a little bit of a decrease in being able to send families as easily over on the trolley line, even though hypothetically that is such an easy. So I think that's another barrier that I don't know exactly how we can overcome that, but also we've been in talks with city staff and brainstorming potentially different flyers or staff out here. Last month we're out here just part of the day and trying to figure out how we can overcome some of that. But again, yeah, I think the other piece, which is not really a barrier, but I think is related, is that with the shift for energy assistance being able to use funding for City of Monmouth, we just are in an unknown period where I just don't know what next year is going to look like. And I do anticipate we may see an increase in need, again, as much as potentially double if it maintains that there isn't that assistance at all. We may see double what we saw in past years.
Thank you. That touches on my next question, I think, that outlook of the future. And I know no one has a crystal ball, right? If we all did, we'd be off doing great things with it. But you touched a little bit on a likely increasing need of support. And then I think earlier you touched on a potential kind of negative outlook for availability of funds to be able to provide that support. Specifically looking at the funds that kind of come into Monmouth and where those look like, right? I know that we have forecasts in our budget, forecasting expenses and revenue. If we were to draw a chart like that here, are we seeing an increasing gap between the need and the support for that need?
That's a really good question. It's not often how we approach, partly because of just the nature of the Resource Center, that we tend to be more responsive. So when the need rises, we are then responsive to the need. It's difficult, I think, for us to forecast. I will also say as an office, we tend to just be people, our culture is such that when the need arises, we're like, oh, no one else is doing this? Let's apply for a grant. Let's do it. Let's boots on the ground. Let's go. What I will say is that I think right now, literally just this week, we are in just such a state of uncertainty that I don't know that I can speak as clearly to that question as we might normally be able to speak to in other times. We just don't 100% know. But we do know, like right now, we have some funds that we know are in place for the coming year. And we anticipate, like if that were the only funds that we were able to get, it would be less than what we have had. And so what it might mean is that we are looking for new funding streams that we haven't explored before, or looking for ways to partner in new ways. I think in general, from a forecasting perspective, we see it from school district to counties to cities to state, that we are just seeing reduced revenue in general. And so I think from that perspective, I anticipate that we may have to be a bit more creative. But I hesitate to speak more clearly on, like, exact trajectory,
I
but.
think we just continue to see an increase in the number of people coming into the Resource Center, especially we've been here a year now. We are more established. There are more services being offered from our building. We are one of the only agencies in the region that is doing the health-related social needs work for just the general population. So if people are coming in to access that benefit, there's still a waiting period for them to be eligible for that benefit. So in the meantime, they may have a shut-off notice that we need to address earlier. And so helping people work through that process through the Resource Center first until we can get them connected to that state benefit is something that we're just seeing that draw our numbers up pretty high.
Thank you. My final question, and then I'll conclude, relates to a detail that you may not have here, and if that's not available, that's fine. But it would inform future discussions. I'm interested in the duration of support. So when you see individuals come in, are you often, dispersing this support once, or is it, for a few months and it goes away, or is it for a longer term? What is the sense of kind of the community need there?
That varies a lot, I think, depending on our specific funding stream. So our general rule is that we help people once within a calendar period. So, and typically that looks like, somebody who comes in, they can show us that next month they're going to be okay, but this month, maybe there was an unexpected medical bill or something that comes up, so we help them that one time, and then typically they can't come back for 12 months. With the exception of like our HRSN program, where once we enroll somebody in that program, they actually get 6 months of support. So it could be, maybe they're job hunting, or we have quite a few people coming through that program that have, some pretty significant health things going on that eventually are going to be okay and get them to where they need to be. But right now they just need that extra support. So our programs absolutely vary, but that rule of thumb is once per calendar year.
And I'm sorry, I think I was intending to ask a question specific to the Monmouth Public Safety fee.
Once.
It's once per
City
calendar
Hall is
year.
Once per calendar year.
And so that's another area where there's a large amount of rigidity around how this fee could be used.
There is. And what I will say is that City of Monmouth, those funds in particular, we've really tried to maintain that. We do have some flexibility with other funds where potentially if there's a different emergency, we might be able to help twice in a calendar year. It doesn't happen that often, but there is those times where someone has hit, unfortunately, within a really short amount of time with a job loss out of their control and then a medical issue that comes up. And so we do have that flexibility. How we generally work on that is if we've helped with City of Monmouth and then something else comes up, we work to find another fund that can help that second time, or vice versa. If we've helped with another fund, maybe this time we can help with City of Monmouth. The City of Monmouth funds we really clearly try to protect, and that's what we've heard from city staff really clearly, and also just from an internal ease of making sure that we are handling things equitably, that once per 12 months is pretty rigid with the City of Monmouth funds. And I'm not sure if that is something I would view as a barrier. I think that is in some ways helpful so that we can maintain that equitable nature of these funds to make sure they stretch as far as possible.
Great. Thank you. That concludes my questions.
All right, seeing no others, thank you so much, and thanks for your annual report. We'll get that and be able to look at that, but we appreciate you as much as you say you appreciate us, so thank you both. All right, and that brings us to a weighty business agenda. So we will go ahead and dive into this and try to get through these. We, first of all, have a guest to talk about the housing rehab grant that we often have worked with before. So, Diana? Yep. Typically, we get the information first, and we'll open the public hearing. So, if you want to come up and tell us what it's about, then I'll see if anyone wants to comment. So. Yeah.
Well, then I will wait to read this. So my name is Diana Satanovich, and I am a program developer and grant writer for Polk Community Development Corporation, otherwise known as Polk CDC. And the first thing I want to do is thank the city manager, Rochelle, and the city council for being willing to be the lead applicant on this new housing rehabilitation application. So, as you may be aware, in 2006, Polk CDC with Polk County, Dallas, Monmouth, Independence, and Falls City formed the Polk Regional Collaborative because the department, Business Oregon Infrastructure Finance, would only accept these CDBG housing rehab applications from a partnership that involved 3 contiguous jurisdictions and a nonprofit. So we formed it, and since then we have, with the rotating leadership of the jurisdictions in the partnership, completed 12 of these programs, and we have probably helped close to 1,000 low-income, single-family, owner-occupied households with essential repairs based on health, safety, and, physical integrity of the house. So I've been doing this for long. I feel like I'm almost an AI robot. So I would welcome any questions that you have because, I do this and you don't, and so I don't know what you do, and you don't probably know all the intricacies that are so exciting about the CDBG program, so I would welcome your questions. Perhaps you would like to know how it works. Would that be?
I think, yeah, briefly, maybe Rochelle should jump in and kind of let us know what it is we are conducting the public hearing on and what action we are taking tonight.
Yeah. So it was to do the public hearing for the grant application, correct?
The thing is that in order to be invited to apply for one of these grants, we have to have notification of the public hearing within the confines of CDBG requirements, this was published in the Itemizer Observer on May 20th. We have to have the public hearing, and we have to have the approved minutes from the public hearing to send to IFA, and then they will invite the city to apply for the CDBG grant for housing rehabilitation. So that's why I'm here, is to fulfill that pre-application process is needed in order to be invited to apply. Does that make sense?
And this is a process that happens every cycle.
Pardon me?
This happens, if not every year, every biennium, and it rotates to someone else to be the executive.
Yes, the
Executive.
members of the Polk Regional Collaborative, the
Right.
jurisdictional members, the last member, which is a project that is currently underway, was Polk County. Prior to that was Falls City.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall that sequencing, and so it's basically rolled up for our turn, or we raised our hand.
And that I appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah, because here's the thing, because the program is such that when you complete the pre-application, you get invited to apply, and then you complete the application, you get an award typically at the end of a calendar year, because the application period is July 1 to September 30. And so you get this award at the end of the calendar year, and then you have a great deal of due diligence to complete in order to get a release of funding to actually do the on-site housing rehabilitation work. And that includes an extensive environmental review with about 14 different categories, communication to the State Historic Preservation Office, to the tribes asking for comment. So what happens is with that due diligence period from the time of award to the time of release of funds, that can take 3 or 4 months. So our goal has been, because we have dedicated staff who work in the field, and I work as the grant writer, and other people, we have staff committed. We have wanted to do these application processes annually because of that extensive period of time that interferes with getting the actual work on the ground. Does that make sense?
It does, but what I think what we're just agreeing to tonight is
Just apply.
that we're gonna do our part, that in the Polk whatever the consortium is, we're gonna do our part to make this work for the entire county.
That's right. The service area is not just Monmouth.
Right.
It's the entire non-entitlement areas of Polk County. Yeah, you make a good point.
Yes, Counselor Oberst?
So if I can clarify just a little bit, you need somebody to take the money and hang on to it while you actually administer and pass that money out. Is that an accurate?
It is, and you remind me that the thing is that these grant funds are only available to jurisdictions.
No, right. So,
Yeah.
so you're, because you are just you're not an actual governmental entity, you need somebody who is to apply for and receive the funds, but we're not in charge of going through all the applications and figuring, and that's you and your people in the field. And so this is really a good thing for Polk County, for each city to take its turn in the county, agreeing to apply for and receive these funds so that you can continue doing the work you're doing. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Because the department, I think around the year 1998, changed the program in such that it used to go directly to a jurisdiction, and the jurisdiction maybe would partner with the Community Action Agency or something, but they changed it to require this partnership between jurisdictions and a nonprofit to do it. So what happens when the money comes, you enter into a sub-grant agreement with Polk CDC, and we do all the work. And so when we open the public hearing, there are a couple things we have to state, but that's essentially it. And you know, we love this program, and we have this dedicated staff now because we've helped so many people. And I'll tell you that over 50% of the households that we help are the head of the household is 60 years of age or older. And so I remember, I think you said this, Councilman Oberst, that the greenest house, remember that quotation?
Yeah, the greenest house is the one you don't tear down.
The one that's already built.
It's already built.
Yeah.
You just keep it alive, right?
And so a couple things happen. One of them is you help these seniors age in place and live in their homes because you address, you know, their accessibility issues and stuff, but they also have the ability then, which is so basic to generational wealth, to pass that home on to their children. And I think we all know that owning a home is probably one of the cornerstone assets in this country.
All right, so I believe in reading the materials, we are going to open a public hearing. We will take any invited testimony and or close the public hearing and then discuss this. We also need to name a certifying officer.
That's true. The person that, so when I complete the environmental review record, which has about 40 documents in it, I have to send the statutory checklist to someone who represents the city to simply sign off. So there are documents like that that the certifying officer needs to sign off on. And the department says it may be the highest elected official, or it may be someone that the council appoints. It's nice if it's somebody that's fairly readily available.
So that is one other option that we need to take care of during this vote, and then to agree to work and to become the lead applicant for the 2025 housing rehabilitation grant. So that is what the business is before us. So I am going to open a public hearing on this matter, of receiving the information about the Polk Regional Collaborative and application for the 2025 CDBG Housing Rehabilitation Grant, and to name our certifying officer to manage the compliance with that grant. So is there anyone here who would like to comment on this matter? All right.
I have to read this.
Seeing no one, no comment, then go ahead and read into the record. Thank
Okay,
you, Diana.
The public notice that was in the IO on May 14th, I think. Anyway, the city of Monmouth is eligible to apply for a 2025 Community Development Block Grant from Business Oregon. Community Development Block Grant funds come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The grants can be used for public facilities and housing improvements, primarily for persons with low and moderate incomes. Approximately $12 million will be awarded to Oregon non-metropolitan cities and counties in 2025. The maximum grant that a city or county can receive is $500,000 for a housing rehabilitation program. The City of Monmouth is preparing an application for a 2025 Community Development Block Grant from the Business Oregon Department for the PRC Regional Housing Rehabilitation Program that will provide grants to owner-occupied homes in Polk County for the purpose of housing rehabilitation. It is estimated that the proposed project will benefit at least 30 persons, of whom 100% will be low or moderate income. A public hearing will be held by the Monmouth City Council at 6:30 p.m. on June 3rd, 2025, and will take place in the council chambers in Monmouth City Hall, located at 151 Main Street West. These meetings are open to the public. The purpose of this hearing is for the Monmouth City Council to obtain citizen views and to respond to questions and comments about community development and housing needs, especially the needs of low and moderate income persons, as well as other needs in the community that might be assisted with the Community Development Block Grant Project and the proposed project. Written comments are also welcome and must be received by 4 p.m. on June 2nd, 2025 at City Hall, located at 151 Main Street West. Both oral and written comments will be considered by the Monmouth City Council in deciding whether to apply. The location of the hearing is accessible to persons with disabilities. Please contact Pam Dornbush, Account Technician, at 503-751-0137 if you need any special accommodations to attend or participate in the meeting, or if you wish to attend via telephone or other electronic means. More information about the Oregon Community Development Block Grants and the proposed project, and records about the cities of Monmouth's past use of Community Development Block Grant funds is available for public review at City Hall, 151 Main Street West during regular office hours. Advance notice is requested. If special accommodations are needed, please notify Pam Dornbush at 503-751-0137 so that appropriate assistance can be provided. Permanent involuntary displacement of persons or businesses is not anticipated as a result from the proposed project. If displacement becomes necessary, alternatives will be examined to minimize the displacement and provide required reasonable benefits to those displaced. Any low and moderate income housing that is demolished or converted to another use will be replaced. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions of Diana? Then I would entertain a motion to. Go ahead, Councilor King.
This is owner-occupied housing only?
Yes.
So someone who's renting a dilapidated house, the owner cannot receive a grant and upgrade that for him. Gosh, with the number of people renting, I'm sort of surprised at that.
It's just a regulation that Business Oregon has for this particular CDBG grant. It's only, the funds are only eligible to owner-occupied low to moderate income households. Yeah.
Thank you.
And will you want to name a certifying officer?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so first I would like to entertain a motion to authorize the City of Monmouth to enter into this grant application process on behalf of the Polk Regional Collaborative for the CDBG Housing Rehab Grant.
So moved, because I don't have the text in front of me. So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Oberst for the motion and Counselor Ridgway for the second. And we'll ask Saber for a roll call, please.
Counselor Beltz?
Aye.
Counselor Carey?
Aye.
Counselor Lopez?
Aye.
Counselor Oberst?
Yes.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
And I would entertain a motion to appoint Rochelle Rudin as the certifying officer for the City of Monmouth.
Madam Mayor, I move to appoint Rochelle Roden as the certifying officer for the City of Monmouth.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Lopez for the motion and Counselor Carey for the second. And we will do by a voice vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. And so now you have your certifying officer. You have our permission to go ahead and put Monmouth's name on the grant application.
Well, I thank you for all the good work you do for your community, all of you.
And thank you for everything you've done for the Polk CDC all these years. So thanks a lot, Diana. All right, that concludes this piece of business. Okay, thanks, ma'am. I'm gonna. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna suggest, because now we have a lot of proposed motions and things to go through and resolutions and roll call votes. So I'm going to offer up a 6-minute recess. If we can take a little break so that Zabra can get all of her roll call pieces together, and we'll be back. Thank you. All right, we are back, and we will invite Finance Director Susie Marston to the table to go through a variety of resolutions. We will hopefully be able to get through these quickly, but it will require a voice or a roll call on each one, so be prepared. Susie, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, I'm bringing to you several resolutions, but we'll start with resolution number 2010 on page 17 of your packet. And this is a supplemental budget. So briefly, basically, we have 3 funds where we're going to receive extra revenue that we did not anticipate at the time the budget was adopted. The first one has to do with the ARPA funding in the general fund. U.S. Treasury required us to obligate any remaining ARPA funds by December 31st, which required a review of where we were at with the spending. So what we saw was there was money still remaining in all the categories, or out of all those categories, in the business and marketing category, and also in the source water projects. Those projects were not able to be obligated by December 31st, so we redirected those funds into the general fund to use on modifying the audio-visual system in the council chambers, installing an audible fire alarm in the city hall. We finished furnishing the open areas in the city hall, and it also includes upgrading the door security system in the police department. And so all of those represent the $77,550 in additional revenue, and we're appropriating it to, splitting it between management and finance and police for that total. The $135,000 is going to be coming from the transit fund, and the second half of this is in the next resolution that will come before you. But basically what this is we, in the transit fund, the grant allowed us to recognize staff support that's coming from the general fund, and we're able to go back to 2022 when this project pretty much started. I did check with the auditors. It's okay to go back and capture it that far. So that represents the $135,000 that will be transferring as the general fund support transfer like all the other funds do. And so we'll be increasing in the general fund the transfer for support services by $135,000 and then appropriating that to the general fund reserves because it's covering salaries that were already budgeted for. The second, I think I said there were 3 funds. There's only 2 funds. The building fund. So the city, on behalf of the school district, collects construction excise tax on new commercial and non-commercial building within the city. And the amount that was collected exceeds the budget, what we budgeted for, $45,000. So we are recognizing $50,000 of additional construction excise tax revenue, and since it's a pass-through going to the school district, we need to appropriate that to the expenditure side so that we don't exceed that. And so that encapsulates this supplemental budget. Staff is recommending adoption of the resolution to stay in compliance with budget law and so we don't exceed the appropriations in these 2 funds. Any questions?
I don't see any questions.
I would love to move adoption of resolution number 2010, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget for the fiscal year 24-25 and directing the finance director to make appropriate entries.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Oberst for the motion and Counselor Belts for the second. And seeing no additional questions, I will ask for the roll call, please, on resolution number 2010.
Counselor Ridgway,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
All right, thank you. We will put that one in the books and move on to the next one.
Okay. Page 20. This is resolution number 2011. This is proposing end-of-year budget transfers, which are allowed by statute. We have 4 funds in my review that look like there are categories which could exceed appropriations. And so I'm proposing budget transfers within each of those funds, and I'll briefly go through them. In the general fund, we had unanticipated expenditures in management and finance, and then also in parks. The management and finance expenditures, we had a punch list to finish up the City Hall project that was unanticipated at the beginning of the year. And then we also replaced a server that exceeded the cost at which we budgeted at. And then in parks, we had to renew our grounds maintenance contract, which came in higher than we anticipated. And so we are proposing to transfer from the library and court departments and also the community development. There was some salary savings that we are going to move to transfer the appropriations up to cover those extra costs. In the water fund, I'm proposing a transfer from the public works operation of $3,000 to the debt service appropriation. The principal amount exceeded what was budgeted, and that was due to an error during the budget. There wasn't enough budgeted to cover the principal payment, so this will take care of that. In the transit fund, this is that $135,000, and along with this is a $65,000 transfer. So the $65,000 that was originally budgeted in the transfer line item was slated to go to the street fund to cover the cost of a trolley storage building. That building, the project costs exceeded what we originally estimated, and so we ended up just paying for it out of the transit fund and used the equipment budget that we had. But it's going to require that we move this $65,000 from the transfer line item up to its management and finance category, but it covers the extra cost for that transit storage building. So that's part of the $200,000. The $135,000 from operating contingencies recognizes that staff support that general fund staff has provided since the trolley program started. And so we're using budgeted contingencies to move up to management and finance to cover that transfer back to the general fund. And that's what generates the extra revenue in the general fund. The transportation SDC fund, before the end of the year, we anticipated an extra $125,000 cost for a transportation system plan and also Gwynn Street environmental and design, the design project. So transferring $125,000 from contingency to cover those extra costs. And so again, staff is recommending adoption of this resolution to avoid exceeding appropriations in these 4 funds.
This is so fun, the end of the year when you do that, you're like, okay, what, you have to wait though. You don't want to do it too early. You can't do it too late. So Counselor Carey.
It is standard end-of-year procedures, and it's not uncommon, and probably fewer this year than there has been in the past. And given that, I would move adoption of Resolution 2011, a resolution approving transfers for the fiscal year 24-25 and directing the finance director to make appropriate entries.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Counselor Carey, for the motion, and Counselor Oberst for the second. Any questions? All right, we will take a roll call on resolution number 2011.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Beltz,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway.
Aye.
Unanimously passes.
Thank you. We will implement that one and get going on those entries. And that brings us to a third one for this evening.
Okay, so for this one, I'm going to invite Wade Carey, our Power and Light Director, to present the electric rate increases.
Saber, did you make me presenter, please? There we go. Okay. Thank you, members of council, mayor. I wanted to come speak to you this evening. I know it's pretty customary for the finance director to give these, but given the unexpected rate increase, well, I was expecting it, but it's pretty non-traditional for a rate increase of this size historically. I wanted to present a little more information from you, or to you, from the rate study that we're currently conducting, and just kind of give you where we're at and where we're going. So earlier this year, we did start the electric cost of rate study, as well as the cost of service analysis, which is almost complete, but it is very in-depth, and there would not have been enough time to fully cover it in this meeting. So we plan on bringing that, I believe, on the July 15th meeting. The contractor will be here remotely to fully go through it so that you can get all the information. This slides here is just a real brief overview of the revenue requirements portion of that study. And, you know, they looked at a few things. They looked at some key assumptions, some summary of the findings, and kind of where we're going. On the revenue requirement objectives, of course, they were looking at all of our operating and power expenses, the debt service, capital costs, and things of that nature. They wanted to make sure that we were meeting our financial obligations set forth in the financial policies of the city. And then they, you know, they're looking at a multi-year approach here. The study was slated to look out 3 years. We've actually gone a little bit further. And then when we come back in July, you'll see the full breadth of everything that they looked at. The key financial assumptions that you can see there on this slide, a couple things I want to point out here is if you look at the expense inflation and the O&M expenses inflation, you notice it's a little bit higher than the CPI. The utility industry is experiencing inflationary costs that we're just not used to. You know, the materials, we still haven't come down, and will probably never come down to pre-COVID again. They have kind of flattened off. Availability has gotten better, but the pricing is still rather high. Also, this year, we started the first year of a 3-year rate case with Bonneville Power, and you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and the rate increase that Bonneville is bringing to its customers it's not much like I've ever seen before. We get billed 2 different ways from Bonneville. One, we get billed for power, and we get billed for transmission. Power, of course, is a much larger portion of our monthly expenses from them. But it hasn't been finalized yet, but what we're being told is a 4.6% increase on power and a 15.5% increase on transmission. And so these are just increases that we're not used to. When I asked around other utilities of their GMs and directors of what they're looking at, they were all pretty much in the same case, 5 to 7% rate increases pretty much across the board, with a few exceptions for some outlying utilities. You can see there in what our existing revenue is. Most all of that is just based upon our rates. We do have a little bit that comes from non-rate revenues like service fees and late charges and things of that nature, but by and large, we're fully funded through the sale of our electricity. You can see on this next slide here, they've broken it down by personnel services, material and other services, as well as the little bit of taxes that we have. You know, for consumer-owned utilities, the two largest costs always are the purchase of our product and our staff, and that's no different from us. Here you can see a breakdown of our power bill versus our transmission bill. And so while the transmission bill at 15.5% increase, it's not nearly as impactful as the 4.6% we're seeing on power increases. And this really just stems from the fact that for decades, Bonneville was a net power exporter. And so they are now a net power importer. And they're bringing in more power outside the region to meet their contractual obligations than they're able to sell in off season. And it's just impacting their costs. So there's just no real way around that. The load is finally in the region has grown so much, and there hasn't been any new generation put online except for really expensive renewables. A little bit of slide here, you can see on what our capital costs are. You know, capital is one of those weird things when we budget for it. Sometimes it's a big number that we budget for. Sometimes it's realized, sometimes it's not. A lot of it's dependent on outside work that gets done. And fortunately, you know, in this FY26, you can see we're at just over $1 million. A lot of that is customer-driven work. So if we were to spend that much, we would get a lot back in aid to construction. So a lot of that just kind of nets itself out. You can see our financial policies here that they used in their calculations and their forecasting. And so this is just the reserves and everything that we've set forth here with the city. And then here's the slide of where we're at right now. You can see the top solid line there is our revenue. The black dotted line is our reserves. I'm going to take a stab because I'm colorblind and say that the navy blue line, you can see it's diving down pretty steeply, and that's simply because we are not collecting enough in revenues to cover our costs. You know, I've been here 2 years. The history I got when I got here was that for years and years, Power and Light had a really large revenue. We didn't have a lot of rate increases, but I was also told that there wasn't a lot of investment into the system. And so when you have a lot of deferred maintenance, you have to start working on the system, and that's what we're doing now. And we're not even doing what I would consider a large amount, but you can definitely see what those costs are doing. If we continue on the path that we're doing now, you know, shortly after into FY28, we will have no reserves if we don't do anything. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. So in summary, the revenue requirement, you can kind of see here, the operating shortfall begins in FY26, this year that we're heading into. You can see what the 6% rate increase this year, as well as what we're looking at for the next 3 years is another 6, and then another 6, and then a 3. You can see what the monthly impact of that would be for the average residential bill, is what this slide is really trying to show. So this year, the 6% is an average of about 5.55 cents per customer a month. This here is just a really good slide. It kind of gives you an idea of where we're at with some local other utilities. This is data that they had readily available to them from work that they've done with other utilities. You can see where we're at now and where we're going to go to with the proposed. We're very much in line with a lot of the other consumer-owned utilities, roughly our size. I did want to make sure when they first gave me this, they did not have our neighbors to the east. I wanted to make sure they included them. So you can see what we're doing here compared to our neighbors. But one interesting thing on here is in my 23 years, there's in consumer-owned utilities, there's been a push toward a more realistic cost of service and billing. We bill two ways, right? We have a fixed monthly charge, and then we have a consumption charge, demand charges, things like that. When you have a very low fixed charge like we do, you're really dependent upon energy sales to recover your costs. And if you have a warm winter, you don't recover some of those costs. It hurts your bottom line, things of that nature. You can see that our fixed charge, which is the bottom block there, is very much in line with Portland General Electric and Pacific Power. That's by design for them. You can see the other COUs have a much larger monthly fixed charge. And COUs started doing that because they found that with the big push for conservation, right, to keep loads low, if you sell less widgets, you have to charge more per widget. And so there's a push to increase that fixed monthly charge to recover a bigger chunk of our fixed costs there than in energy sales. When we come back in July, you'll see that the contractor, the consultant, they're actually looking that our fixed charge should be almost $34 a month. Now, I'm not saying that's where we're going to go, but when you look at a real cost of service analysis, that's what they're finding.
Now, what is it now?
It's $12.95 right now, but with the rate increase, it'll go up a little bit. And then you can see here, again, just kind of a duplicate slide, what they've got here looking out over the years. And interestingly enough, the 29 at 3% is still factoring in the fact that we're looking to build the substation in FY30 and with the 3%. But now we don't know what Bonneville is going to do after this 3-year rate period, so that could all change. But, going back to this slide here, we really need to do something to stop this dive of our reserves. And so where we're at right now is a proposed 6% rate increase for this year. And then you can see, of course, we've got the resolution, and then the old rate schedule, the new rate schedules there with the red line of what the rates were and what they're going to for your reference. So, any questions?
Just a comment that everybody hates rate increases, but not as much as they hate power outages. So, it's never fun. But you guys have got to do what you got to do, especially when your supplier is jacking prices. I don't see any recourse beyond asking folks to help pay for the electricity that they're consuming. So.
I remember in sort of early discussions about doing rate study, talking about some more complex changes to how we charge for power, maybe based on bigger users or something like that. Are we going to see some of that, or is it really just an overall sort of flat increase?
The rate study, the cost of service analysis portion of it really looks at what if we're charging each sector of customer appropriately. And there's a lot of data around that, and I can tell you that our rates are not balanced right now. So when we come back in July, you'll have some information to see, what adjustments could be made to the different rate classes, residential, small commercial, large commercial, that kind of thing. And ultimately, it'll be up to you guys to decide how balanced you want to make those.
And if we did decide to do that, when would that take effect?
We would put that in next year's rate increase. They're just, we needed to get into the budget process to get the rate study process going, and there just wasn't enough time to get that to get those rate design changes before you this year.
Okay, other questions? Harry?
I was not present when you did your presentation in the budget, normal budget process. I'm wondering whether the 6% was proposed at that time when you made that.
It was, yes.
And this is the first I've seen this. The date on it is May 13, when it was completed or when it was submitted. So I'm wondering about that timing. And there's more, I mean, I would like to be able to dig into this. I'm not going to be able to do anything about it this first year, I don't think. But I think we need to clarify whether if we approve this budget, does that mean we're approving a 6% next year, 6% the year beyond that, and a 3% in '29? Or are we going to do that one at a time?
Those will be one at a time. We do our yearly rate increases every year. So while the budget was approved for this year, the capital plan was approved for the 5 years, but we still only do our rate increases on a yearly basis. So no, passing this resolution will have no effect on locking us in for rate increases in the future. This was just informational only. And the date on it, I had them prepare this for the budget meeting, but it did not come up that it was needed during the budget committee discussions.
Well, and I'm not indicating, I'm not suggesting that it's not an appropriate increase. It's just a hell of a lot of, it's a big one. It's a multi-year, and I think we need some due diligence on it. I'd like to know what the assumptions are on any number of those categories. So we'll look forward to that discussion in July.
Yeah, you'll find that the information that the consultant will bring in July will be very in-depth. And you'll get a copy of the report before that meeting, so you'll have a chance to look at it and dig into it prior to that meeting.
Councilor Ridgway, then Councilor Lopez.
Thank you. I apologize I didn't ask the question this week. I was out of the country for a little while. But I'm curious, as Councilor Carey mentioned, this is 4 years proposed of rate increases. How, historically, how unusual is that? If we were to go back in time the last few years, have we seen anything comparable to this? Is this?
No. It's, I mean, this is like I said, the increase from Bonneville is pretty unprecedented in my time in the industry. And it is for 3 years. Now, it's a 6%, or it's the 4.6 and the 15.5 this year. And that price is supposed to be good throughout that 3-year rate period. So we're not expecting another Bonneville rate increase next year. The 6% is just based upon our revenue requirements of what it costs to run the department and do the work that we need to do versus the revenue we're getting in. And again, we're approving this resolution does not lock us in for what the rate increases are going to be in the future. That's them forecasting what we're going to need to do. So my understanding is, in trying to get history from before I got here, is there was not a lot of investment into the system. Bonneville, for the last decade or so, has not had large rate increases, usually 1.5%, 2%. The past director, actually, I've been told, gave 2 rate decreases, which...
True statement, 1% cuts while I was mayor.
Which in the utility industry, that's what you don't do. If you're collecting too much, you hold it until this kind of year comes along, and so that you can have that reserve. You know, our reserves were bigger. Monmouth Power and Light funded a big portion of this building, and that was all money we had sitting in the bank, and now that's not there anymore. So, the steep dive is just due to cost to operate the utility. And the only option is to do less. And that's not a preferred method, because things that we don't do today that need to be done and we do them in 5 years, they're just going to cost more. So none of this stuff's getting any cheaper.
Thank you.
Two things. First, whenever I look at what we're paying, I try to look at what we're getting for it, right? And so we're talking about level of service. When I go back to the to the page where you have the residential rate survey, I look at some of these, and some of these I'm not familiar with, right? I'm not familiar with Forest Grove and what they're doing there or what have you, but I am fairly familiar with Portland General Electric and Pacific Power, and as a former customer of both of those when I lived other places. And so if I look at, just comparing both my anecdotal experiences and also the, experiences that our community experienced throughout, natural disasters such as the ice storm, our level of service is unparalleled. We have a much higher level of service in terms of, the responsiveness of teams. There was something that went out, handful of months ago, and I made comment here, and someone was there within the hour there to fix it. This was up on Jackson Street here in Monmouth, and the level of service that we experience here is incredible. It's even more incredible given the rates that we're paying, and so. Gosh, if we're experiencing that level of a differential, it says to myself, well, if something's too good to be true, maybe it is in the long term, and I think we're just seeing that now. We're paying for the level of service that we get. We expect this excellent level of service, and golly, I hope that the next ice storm, we continue to have this level of service. And so that's just how I frame these kinds of discussions. I would like to, my other point, and not questions, but just points, to note is that this 6% increase, if you look down into the red line version, is a 6% increase along all the lines. So that includes that base charge going up from $12.95 and that energy charge. Oftentimes as a consumer, when I think about increases, I think about, okay, what's the base of the base, and this increases whatever I'm getting on top of it. And so just noting for the record that increase is across the board. I do feel that it is warranted, again, based on the level of service, based on the city's, required, stability of this program. But, this has my support. Just two notes there. Thank you.
Yep, if we paid for reliability alone, I think it would be, we'd be paying way more than this, right? As someone who operates buildings on both Pacific Power and Monmouth Power and Light, I can certainly tell you that the rate difference is noticeable.
I'd like to just reiterate Chris's point about service. We have 6 rental houses in Independence, and one of those will go empty. And at some point during the 3-4 weeks it's empty and I'm working on the house, I will come in and the range clock will need to be reset because the power's gone off. It doesn't happen here. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, so pending a great in-depth look at this in July, I would entertain a motion for consideration on the rate increases that were discussed, in fact, at the budget committee level.
Hearing no one else, I move approval of Resolution 2012, setting rates and charges for electric utility service and repealing Resolution number 1988.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Obers for the motion and Councilor Lopez for the second. Any additional questions? So please roll call, Sabra.
Councilor Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilor Lopez.
Aye.
Councilor Carey.
Aye.
Councilor Belts. Aye. Counselor Oberst.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Can go forth and reprogram the computers to be ready for that one. And we will have our Public Works Director, Russ Cooper, join Susie now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. What I have before you here is resolution number 2013, which represents a proposal for water rate increase of 5.5% for fiscal year 25-26. Our last rate increase was a similar rate increase last year. These increases are based on a 2020 study by Gallardi Consultants. I think Councilor Ridgway asked about multi-year rate proposals. These studies are designed as just that, a proposal. They'll look at our expenditures over time, include our capital projects that are planned, as well as an anticipated inflationary cost over that time, and make a proposal for a rate increase that will help you maintain your reserve balances and still accomplish everything that you need to do. So as stated, this is the last of a 5-year proposal. The impact on our base rate for a typical single-family residential home will be increasing the base rate from $23.71 to $25.02, which is a $1.30 increase per month. The consumption increase for 100 cubic feet represents a 19-cent increase. Using a industry design standard of 100 gallons per person per day consumption. When you work that equation out, it amounts to about 75 cents per person per month, which is pretty affordable when you think about the 100 gallons per day per person. So a typical two-person home we're anticipating will be somewhere in the $2.80, $3 a month increase for their water rate. Now, that doesn't take into account if you have teenagers living in your home or water leaks or whatever, but yeah. So I did note that when my kids moved out of the house, my water consumption went way down. The resolution is included in your packet, and there is a proposed motion as well, and we'll answer questions as I can.
Did we budget to do another rate study to get these updated for another 5 years?
Thank you. Yeah, we're in the process of getting a proposal put together for another rate study.
That's what I thought. Councilor Carey.
Yeah, I said this at the conclusion of the budget meeting, and I'll say it again when we get to our general budget. We're going to want to track pretty closely on when we've got our capital improvement projects that are budgeted and sit out there and say, geez, we got to get a lot of money to pay for those. We need to make sure we know how many of those are completed, or they'll all be completed, but how many of those get pushed off and pushed outside of that rate study. That's in our budgeting. I think we need to figure out a way to demonstrate that a little more not transparent, because it's not attempted to be that. It's not as easy as I'm sure I think it is. So that'll be important. And the reason I asked Director Carey about whether we're obligating to a 6% for 3 years, we sort of were on this one. When we bought that, that was the deal. We had this kind of a thing going on, and it's probably worked out just fine. But we just need to do that with our eyes open. So Anyway, good enough.
Anyone? Counselor Loop?
Madam Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 2013, establishing new rates for water service and repealing resolution number 1989.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Counselor Lopez, and the second, Counselor Oberst. And I will ask Saber for the roll call, please.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Beltz,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Yes, aye.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. And that takes us to our next one, which in fact is stormwater.
All right, thank you. Yes, resolution number 2014 is a resolution proposing to increase our stormwater utility fee by 3%, which equates to a 43-cent increase to the ESU or equivalent service unit. That unit is basically it is what an average single-family residential home represents in square footage of impervious area. So for single-family residents, their monthly stormwater charge will go from $14.42 up to $14.85. This was a similar study when we implemented the stormwater utility. The consultant took some of our capital projects and in the same way projected costs that we would incur over a 5-year window and encouraged modest rate increases over each of those 5 years to keep track with inflation, our capital needs, as well as our reserve levels. I don't have much more to add to it than that, and there's a proposed motion and the resolution in your staff report.
Counselor Lopez?
I recognize that no one likes to raise fees, but since I don't hear any other motions and this is necessary, I move approval of resolution number 2014, establishing new rates for the stormwater utility fee service charge and repealing resolution number 1990.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Lopez, for the motion and Counselor Beltz for the second. Seeing no additional comments, we will go for the roll call.
Counselor Ridgway,
Aye.
Counselor Lopez,
Aye.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Beltz,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Cooper, for your presence this evening. We now have another couple of items, and that is to actually adopt the budget so that the finance department can get going on that and have that ready to go on July 1. Susie?
Okay, thank you. Page 56 of your packet is for Resolution 2014 for the city to elect to receive state revenue sharing funds for fiscal year 25-26. State revenue sharing consists of the cigarette tax, liquor tax, marijuana tax, which are all general fund revenues and not restricted. It also consists of gas tax, which is restricted to the street fund for transportation improvements. So the state revenue sharing amount coming in, or estimated to come into the general fund, is $894,679. We've estimated the gas tax for the street fund. Oh, I didn't put that number in. Let's see. I'm sorry, back up. For the general fund, $348,500. And in the gas tax, we estimated $894,679, which will go to the street fund. So the resolution 2015 is for the city to elect to receive this state revenue sharing funding for fiscal year 25-26. And a proposed motion is included for you in the staff report.
As approved by the Budget Committee, Counselor Carey.
Anticipating that there won't be much of this, but if we do have discussion, it'll be framed to the motion. So I move to approve Resolution 2015, declaring the city's election to receive state revenues in fiscal year 2025-2026.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Carey, for the motion, and Counselor Belz for the second. Is there indeed any discussion on this item?
My favorite piece of budget every year, that we have to say to the state, yes, we'll take your money. That it actually takes a resolution and just makes me laugh.
The fact that that amount of money declines regularly is also a little bit sticks
Don't
in
get
your
me
crop.
started.
All righty, seeing no discussion, Madam Jewell.
Counselor Oberst.
Yes.
Counselor Belz.
Yes.
Counselor Carey.
Aye.
Counselor Lopez.
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, tell the state we'll take our little bitty share of all their stuff. Oh, I did not hold a public hearing. Do I have to? I don't have to hold a public hearing on that one, do I? Do I? Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Go back. I would open a public hearing for any comment on accepting state revenue sharing. Russ Cooper, you better not be walking up here or I'll hit you with this gavel.
None online and none in the room, Mayor.
Thank you very much. All right, now I will close the public hearing, but we already took our vote, so please record that vote accordingly. And we will get a staff report, then open our public hearing on adoption of the 2025-26 budget.
Okay, thank you. Also bringing to you tonight Resolution 2016, adopting the fiscal year 25-26 budget along with the 2025-2030 capital improvement plan. I've included in your packet staff report. I will go over it just to highlight some of the things. So the Budget Committee met May 6th, May 8th, and May 13th to review the proposed budget for 25-26, along with the capital improvement plans for 2025 to 2030. A public hearing was held on May 6th to consider the election of state revenue sharing. On May 13th, the Budget Committee finished reviewing and deliberated and approved the proposed budget and recommended, and also the 2025-2030 capital improvement plans, and recommended both of them to the City Council to consider for adoption. The total budget for all funds is $56,656,628, which includes $11,496,790 in capital improvement projects for fiscal year 25-26. You'll remember that in May of 2024, the City Council approved changes to the city stabilization policy to bring the reserve requirement down from 15% to 12.5%, with the goal of returning to 15% when it's practical. In fiscal year 25, we did implement a public safety fee, which served to help with that situation. So in fiscal year 25, we're projecting to end the year with a 21% reserve. And in fiscal year 26, we're projecting an ending fund balance of 14.7. So it's still on a downward trend, but the public safety fee slowed it down a little bit and bought us a little more time. We do expect to maintain reserve balances at 25% in the street building and the enterprise funds for fiscal year 26. Now I just want to go over some of the fund highlights and changes for next year. So the city has been receiving IT support from Polk County. We are going to be moving away from that, and the city of Monmouth and Independence are currently working together on a plan to provide services to Monmouth. In the police department, in the budget is included the purchase of a new patrol vehicle and the hiring and training of 2 police officers, officers 15 and 16, that will be afforded by the public safety fee. In the Community and Economic Development Department, we'll be implementing the recommended strategies from the current or recently completed economic opportunities analysis, and also completing an urban growth boundary land swap, which is new. In parks, the focus will be on deferred maintenance of park facilities, including the splash fountain, to clean and seal that, etching amphitheater stage and skate park surfacing and park sign repairs. For non-represented employees, there is a cost of living adjustment of 3% included in this budget. We do recognize that it is higher than the CPI benchmark adopted by the council, but we're proposing 3% in light of, in previous fiscal years, cost of living adjustments being below that benchmark and no COLA from last year. I'd also like to note that the Monmouth Police Officers Association and the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, bargaining agreements are currently under negotiation. There's no COLA included in this budget. So once the negotiations are finalized, the budget for Public Works and Monmouth Power and Light will likely change, and so there are budgeted contingencies to absorb that. We just went through proposed stormwater, water utility, and power and light rate increases, which were all included in the proposed budget. Positive note, the property and liability insurance, we budgeted a 10% increase for fiscal year 25-26. Shortly after the budget was approved, I received word that the actual increase is only going to be 3%. So we already have savings in that area, and that's a cost that gets spread across all funds. So that concludes my staff report. There is a proposed motion included at the end, but I am happy to take any questions.
Councilor Ridgway.
Thank you. Do you know if what the likelihood of any changes, significant changes that may occur to impact the budget over the next 2 or 3 weeks before the council meets again? As far as the contract negotiations could play a role, is there any updates that you expect in the next couple of weeks?
None that I can see right now. I mean, the contract negotiations could, but I don't know that for sure.
Go ahead, and then I'll open the public hearing.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of the hands that went into this budget, and just call out this budget as a document that, you know, not only reflects the will of the budget committee, but also reflects, you know, our stated Monmouth values and our council goals, which are included toward the end of the budget. It's a monumental lift, and it's a document that I thank you, Susie, and all of staff for putting together. I recognize that it's a lot of work.
Thank you on behalf of all of our staff and Rochelle.
All right. With that, I will open the public hearing and ask if there is any public comment on the City of Monmouth fiscal 25-26 budget, if any comments were submitted.
None online, no, and none in the room.
All right. I will close the hearing. And just a moment for additional questions or a motion.
I just want to say thanks to Susie for working through this budget while tackling a health challenge that would knock most people on their butt. And you have stuck with us, and thank you so much for your hard work on all this.
You're welcome. My eyes are watery. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of Resolution 2016, adopting the budget, making appropriations, levying ad valorem taxes in the amount of $413,670, and the adopting of the capital improvement plan for the 2025-26 fiscal year.
Second.
And I have a question. Do we also need to levy the permanent rate?
It's included in the resolution at the end. So let's see.
I just want to clarify that since we did, in fact, levy the 400. Yep. Yes, it is actually in the resolution, but perhaps we could amend the motion to also adopt the permanent rate of $3.6107 per thousand of assessed value.
Madam Mayor, I would like to amend the motion to adopt the permanent rate of $3.6107 per $1,000 of assessed value.
Amended, second.
All right, the motion has been made, seconded, amended, and seconded. Are there any additional questions? All right. Yes, Councilor Lopez, sorry.
Not a question, but just something I would like to call everyone's attention to. This is something that occurred in the current fiscal year, but is first reflected in this budget, is our new incredible logo. I'd like to actually call your attention to page 14 of the budget. It's 19 of the budget document, where you can find a wonderful photo of this logo and a young Monmouth citizen.
All right, Saber, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Belts? Aye. Counselor Carey?
Aye.
Counselor Lopez?
Aye.
Counselor Oberst?
Yes.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Passes.
Thank you very much. And we have an adopted budget, so thank you. And interestingly, Councilor Ridgway, if any changes were made between to this particular dollar amount that was approved by the Budget Committee, if that amount were over 10%, it would actually have to go back to the Budget Committee for consideration before we could adopt it. And it would have to, that meeting would have to be noticed. You'd have to present it to them. The new amount would have to be publicly noticed, and then we'd have to adopt it. We'd be here at 4:49 p.m. on June 30th trying to get all of that done. So just see the end of last year and now beginning of next. So that brings us to reports, and so hopefully we can keep those brief tonight. I do want to report last week, sometime last week, actually MyNet adopted its 25-26 budget, and in that budget document, they actually do mention the 10-year debt service shortfall amounts, showing a nice little chart that in 2014-15, MyNet fell short of making a $1.25 million debt service payment. And as of 22-23, that shortfall is zero. They have not, and do not anticipate falling short. So interesting information, and I don't know if that budget, last I looked, it was not available online on the MyNet website, so if it is not there, I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it. But our local internet service provider has adopted a 25-26 budget of $3,600,000 in expenses, and again, significant capital investment they are still making into the system to ensure its reliability, and doing so while able to pay back their debt. So that was exciting. And my only other thing, last Friday morning, we have a monthly Polk breakfast for elected officials and staff for various jurisdictions, cities, the county. We have various partners there. And last Friday, we had a special guest, Representative Andrea Salinas joined us. So she was there to give a brief update on some of the things she is working on in Washington, and just really to hear what's going on in Polk County, what the needs are, what projects that we are working on, so that she can continue to help with those as possible. So that concludes my report. Any board and commission reports? Councilor Oben.
Tree board debriefed the tree planting exercise, and we will make a few changes for next year. One of the biggest things we've seen is that last year, most of the trees ran around $80, so $40 from the homeowner and $40 from the city. This year, most of the trees were more like $120, and we had put a $50 cap on the city's contribution. So we're going to have to study on that a little bit. We have more than enough appropriated each year to cover a higher contribution from the city. But this program is, I believe, starting to take off. We had 16 applicants this year, and I am hopeful that we can continue. I'm looking at one right across the street, and it continues to thrive, and it's looking good. Senior Advisory Board is always the stuff that is getting done over there. Barbara goes through this list, and I can't keep up always, but we've got a new volunteer driver for the bus who is undergoing training. One of the interesting ones is the Red Cross will come into your home, and if you don't have smoke detectors, or you have old and outdated smoke detectors, for free, they will give you new smoke detectors. They will also do an assessment of your house for possible fire dangers, and they will look at the outside of your house, looking at wildland fires and defensible space around your house and so on. So that's a little thing that the Red Cross is up to. The Western is public health major is adding a 6-week full-time practicum. And part of that's going to be someone working on looking at the senior center as an age-friendly building and making recommendations for things we might do to improve it on that score. July 4th Festival this year runs midday on the 3rd, on all day on the 4th. The Friends of the Senior Center will have a booth that will be providing cookies and ice cream. So be sure to stop by there. The Senior Center itself will also have a booth just around the corner from the city booth, and they will, of course, have their fabulous float in the parade. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Counselor Carey?
Quickly, the Planning Commission met on May 21st, and they had 2 real items of business, and probably half of you already know this, but they did approve the commercial development in a small commercial development in Edwards Addition, which is a residential area, but this has been planned for some time, and that there was some need for variance, overhangs and other things, but that was in the end approved unanimously. And then they also are recommending, and we'll get it, they're recommending that we accept the economic opportunities analysis and related amendments to the comprehensive plan. And they recognize that this is an aspirational deal, but it's something that we can strive for, and we'll get that sometime in the future. That concludes my report.
Great. Any other board commissions? Then Rochelle with our city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing I'd like to discuss is our UGB swap bill. It is now scheduled for the 3rd reading and hopefully vote tomorrow. It started on the agenda on March 22nd and has been postponed every day because the Senate is so far behind on their work, and so it just keeps getting pushed. But we're hopeful. Then it'll go back to the House for a small reconciliation, and then to the governor for signing, hopefully. So there's that. The homeless shelter, the ribbon cutting is going to be June 10th, and I heard today that the governor is anticipated to be there for that. If you're going to attend that, could you please let us know so we can make sure and publicly notice that if we do have a quorum attending that event. Attended the WU athletic auction last Saturday with Sabra and her lovely spouse and Carter, and that was a great event. I went last year as well, and so that was a great event. I don't know if we've heard how much they raised. Oh, really? Because last year was about 150, so they did great. That's great. I reported in May that the IGA for the regional water treatment plant would be coming to council this evening. There was a bit of a delay regarding attorney review. Our attorneys have reviewed ours and are good with it, and so we'll hopefully be bringing that back at the 17th meeting for the council to review. And David Carr, our city engineer, will be here as well to present that to the council. If you're interested in working the city info table at the farmers market, which is 10 to 2 on Sundays, please let Sabra know. Also, she is doing a video project for summer reading and asking folks to identify a book you'd like to read this summer or what you would recommend. And so if you're interested in that, please let us know as well. I'd love to get you involved in that. Cafe Ayula, the new French bistro, is opening tomorrow, which is right down the street. So try to get in there and check it out. I bet it's going to be exciting. And then also I wanted to let you know that the executive director of the Oregon Department of Energy appointed Director Wade Carey to the Energy Advisory Work Group. So that's super cool. And then for some dates on the events, last day of school festival is this Friday at 3 p.m. Pride is this Saturday from 10 to 2. The summer reading kickoff carnival is Wednesday, June 18th from 11 to 1. And then Juneteenth, the Freedom Celebration, will be Thursday, June 19th from 5:30 to 8 p.m. in the Main Street Amphitheater. That's all I have.
All right, I am going to make one other announcement. I wanted to wait until nobody else was watching this. This year, there will be a change in the 4th of July tradition regarding the mayor's appearance. The mayors will not be in their traditional place behind the horses, but instead will be accompanying the Monmouth Independence trolley along the parade route.
Very good. Who's going to take your horse duty? Your duty.
I nominate Overs to fill
I'm experienced. I know how to do it.
We the mayors did talk about we didn't plan it in enough time, but perhaps we could auction that off to benefit the FFA in the future.
Yeah.
For now, I think it's Sabra because we just told the Rotary it's your problem. All right. And with that, a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
This conference is no longer being recorded.